Shalom, peace and love, Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to be reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 13 to 16. Bear with me as I get through this, as I try to get through this, y'all willing. Bear with me. It'd be so much happening, like, when I'm trying to, like, read the word on live. Like, y'all knows. Bear with me. The book of Genesis, chapter 13, verse 1. And Abram went up from Mizraim and Abram went up from Mizraim, that's Egypt, into the south. And Abram, that was Abraham before he became Abraham. He was known as Abram. So from the top, and Abram went up from Mizraim, that's Egypt, into the south, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him. So he took his, I believe that's his nephew. He took his nephew with him, and you know, he took his wife, and they headed south to Egypt. And in the other writings, it was something, he had a misunderstanding with his dad. I believe his dad was doing something with some idols, and he like, yo, I got to go. So this is where he then slid out, and him and his wife and his nephew Lot, they ended up in Egypt. Verse 2, and Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. So that's news to me. He was already up. It's not news to me. I had a different spin to it that, I took away. He was already up. He must have, his dad must have already, had some, something going on, but his the Most High, most likely blessed him. So, and Abraham was very rich in livestock, and in silver, and in gold. Verse 3, and he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. Verse 4, to the place of the slaughter place which he had made there at first. And there Abraham called on the name of Yahuwah. So he called on the name of Yahuwah. He called on the name of Yah, in this place. Like, and this was a place where they were doing offerings. So like, yeah. So yeah, this is yeah, this is a place where they were doing the offerings or whatever. And I just want to make sure that I'm picking up at the right place. I didn't miss anything. Yeah, I didn't miss anything. I remember this is where I left off. Just to be sure, I'm yeah, I gotta make sure. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, this is where I left off. So yeah. So so he came to the place of the slaughter place which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of Yahuwah. So this is where we see Abraham calling on the name of Yahuwah, like the Most High, Yah, Abba Yah. And this is the book of Genesis chapter 13. In verse 4, we see Abraham. This is where Abraham called on the name. So he was aware of the name already. And I remember reading in the prior verses where, you know, the name of Yah was called on first. This was like a couple chapters back. I believe in the time of Shem. You know what I mean? But yeah. This is like information that we find ourselves glossing over or reading over or just overlooking. So, you know, you got to pay attention and keep in context. Verse 5. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. So his nephew had you know, had his thing going on. He had his flock. He had his own situations going on. So this is what happened. Verse 6, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were great, so that they could not dwell together. So it was just like a conflict of space. They had to split it up. They had to you know, go their separate ways. This is what it says. Like it was just, you know, not enough space for their livestock. They had too much going on. They had too many animals, too many herds, too many tents. You know, so something had to be done. Verse 7, and there was strife between the herdsmen. So the herdsmen, the herdsmen that worked for them, it was strife amongst them. So they had workers, they had herdsmen who worked for them. So the herdsmen was like, you know, bumping heads. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. And at that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelt in the land. Verse 8, then Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brothers. So this is what he had to tell his nephew, like, man, we ain't sweating that, man. We gotta let there be no smoke between us, like, nor should it be any smoke between our herdsmen. You know, we brothers. And this is how it's supposed to handle. This is how it's supposed to be handled. And when you have, this is how it can be handled. When two people have what they need, all that they need, you can, you know, have rational, reasonable conversations. But when, somebody is lacking, it's hard to get. And if someone is lacking, one of the parties is lacking and somebody is having, it's hard for the person who's having to speak reasonably and rational to the one that's lacking, you know? But being as though they were both squared away, this is the conversation they can have, a reasonable conversation. Verse 9, is not all the land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, then I go the right. Or if you go the right, then I go the left. So, this is them going their separate ways. This is them making it, I'm going to go this way, you go that way. Just so we don't, have these misunderstandings. Our herdsmen don't have these misunderstandings. Verse 10. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan. That is, and Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahuwah destroyed Sodom and Amorah, like the garden of Yahuwah, like the land of Mizraim as you go toward Sawar. So this was rich in water, like this was like some healthy land before, the Most High destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It was like the garden of Yah. It was rich. Verse 11. So Lot chose for himself all the plain of the Jordan, and Lot moved east. Thus they separated from each other. So they split up. Verse 12. Abraham dwelling in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelling in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent as far as Sodom. Verse 13. But the men of Sodom were evil and sinned before Yahuwah, exceedingly so. Verse 14. And after Lot had separated from him, Yahuwah said to Abram, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. Verse 15, for all the land which you see I shall give to you and your seed forever. Verse 16, and I shall make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then your seed also could be counted. Verse 17, arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. Verse 18, so Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built a slaughter place there to Yahuwah. So he's building these slaughter places to offer to the Most High. And this was a thing. It's the ultimate slaughter was his only begotten son. So before his ultimate slaughter, his ultimate sacrifice, which is the ultimate, which is the only begotten son, this is what was done. Offerings were offered to the Most High, all kinds of animals and grain and, yeah. Chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to be in the days of Amraphel sovereign of Shinar. So this is king of Shinar. Arioch, sovereign of Elazar, king of Elazar. Kendorla, Omer, king of Elam, and Tidal, sovereign meaning king of Goyim. Verse 2, that they fought against Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Amorah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemerba, king of Seboyim, and the king of Bela, that is Soror. So these kings, these are ancient kings, and they going at it. They about to go at it. This about to go down. I don't know where these, it like I said before, we can't expect the scriptures to cover all what's the word I'm looking for? All records of each individual's lives, that existed at the time. So yes, it was more to the story, but these scriptures, the ancient writings are zeroing in on those who walk with the Most High. Those are the main characters of, the biblical scriptures, the writings of those who were, following the instructions of the Most High and obedient to his spiritual law and spiritual government. Yes, it was other things going on and other people going on. But so this is clearly a good indication of this, because these ancient kings was going at it. They was like gearing up to fight. So it's like verse 3, all these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. Verse 4, 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. Verse 5, and in the 14th year Kedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and struck the Rephaim in Ashtoreth, Karnaim, and the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emites in Shaweh, Kiriathim. Verse 6, and the Horites in their mountain of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. So they striking people left and right in the area. They rebelled. They like, we not under your rulership anymore, and we striking. It seemed like they strike the Rephaim. That's a familiar term. But let me see what it says in here. It's probably the same terminology. I just want to be sure. The Rephaim mean. So that's verse 5. Yeah, Rephaites. Yeah, so that was just a people. I thought it was like something special, or a special kind of people, like the Nephilim. But no, the Nephilim is the giants, and that's the Rephaim is something different. It's just like a different people. Yeah, so they striking left and right. Verse 7, and they turned back and came in Mishpat, that is Qadesh, and struck all the country of Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hatzitzon Tamar. Verse 8, and the sovereign of Sodom and the sovereign of Amorah, and the sovereign of Admah, and the sovereign of Zeboim, and the sovereign of Bela, that is Soror, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim. So they, all these kings that I just named, they gathered together and they like, yeah, we going to war. We going to go, yeah, we going against whoever. Verse 9. So they against Kedorlaomer, sovereign of Elam, and Tidal, sovereign of Goyim, and Amraphel, sovereign of Shinar, and Aryak, sovereign of Elazar. 4 sovereigns against 5. So it was 4 kings against 5. And it was going down. So you got 4 against 5, and it was just outnumbered. Somebody was out 1 king short. Verse 10, and the valley of Siddim had many tar pits. So at the time they got tar pits. So just to describe what these pits were, it had, you know, tar, hot tar that they used to lay down bricks. They had pits with this hot stuff in it. This hot black liquid gooey stuff. They had pits of this stuff. So if you fell in this tar pit, it was over for you. You was done. You was done. And it might have been, I don't know what came to mind. It made me just think about it was just a pit of oil. But these literally tar pits, man. And I don't know if they built them or they just existed in the area. But it says, and the valley of Siddim had many tar pits, and the sovereigns of Sodom and Amorah fled and fell there. So the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. So they was done. Sodom and Gomorrah kings, they fell instantly. I don't know if they fell in the tar pits or they just fell from the swords of the other kings that they were fighting against. And the remainder fled to the mountains. Verse 11, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Amorah and all their food and went away. Verse 12, so the kings they were fighting against took all their situation, everything that they had, and went away. Verse 12, and they took Lot. They took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and left. So they even took Lot. And Lot wasn't saved. They took Lot with them. Poor Lot, you know, he got gathered up in the spoil. And they left. Verse 13, and one who had escaped came and informed Abram, the Hebrew. So this is where Abram is first known and first described in the writings as a Hebrew. So we know Abram was a Hebrew. And this is chapter 14, verse 13, where Abram is being identified as a Hebrew, where a person was first identified as a Hebrew. So this is Abram being identified as the Hebrew in the book of Genesis, chapter 14, verse 13. And one who had escaped came and informed Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Ashkol and brother of Aner. And they had a covenant with Abram. Verse 14, and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So he had 300 He had 300 trained. Abraham had an army. He had 318 trained servants, like trained to move, trained to move out, trained to move on people. This is the time of Abram. Like, this is the knowledge that was brought into the world, and they was well aware of how to defend themselves and fight. So once he heard that his nephew was taken, he armed everybody from the, like, we out. These are 318 men he had on payroll, obviously. So 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Verse 14. And he and his servants divided against them by night and struck them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is on the left of Damascus. So they slid up on him, caught him slipping, and ran down on him at night. Verse 16, so he brought back all the goods and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. That's what I remember reading. So when I was saying that Abraham was very rich in livestock and silver, I remembered my last live, I covered Genesis, from Genesis chapter 9 to 12. And the end of 12, he was like he left Pharaoh. And Pharaoh sent him on his way, with pretty much all that he had. All that he became rich. So it wasn't that he inherited from his dad. It was more so he came up off of Pharaoh. And it was like a big misunderstanding with his wife. And Pharaoh was pretty much looking out for Abraham on the strength of his wife. And this is how Abraham became rich with all livestock, silver, and gold. He left Pharaoh with all of that because Pharaoh felt so, ashamed that he laced Abram with all that. It says, and he treated Abraham well for her sake. So this is what he did on the strength of Sarah. Abraham became rich on the strength of Sarah. This is what Pharaoh did for him. It says, and Pharaoh officials saw her and praised her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house, and he treated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and cattle and male donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels. So he laced them with all that. This all came from Pharaoh. Did Abraham know that he'll come up like that? I'm not sure. I don't know. What happened with his wife? Like, it was just like, he was like, Pharaoh most likely had so much that he can give Abraham so much to the point Abraham became rich off of gifts, just gifts being gifted by the Pharaoh. And that's all I'm going to go. That's all I can really speak on that situation. I don't know what happened with his wife. I don't think Pharaoh touched his wife, but he got close enough to where the Most High threatened him and this woman belongs to Abram. and Pharaoh became aware and pretty much sent them on their way. Like he didn't go any further in the relationship with Sarah, but they left with all that good. They left with all that cattle, all them servants, all them riches. Anyway, fast forward, he he went and got his nephew. You know, the people who kidnapped his nephew, he ended up taking them down with his with the army that what he had. Pretty much probably he probably picked up from Pharaoh as well. So he brought back all the goods and all he brought back all the goods and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. So his brother Lot, meaning his brother's son Lot, his nephew Lot. Verse 17, and after his return from striking of Kedorlaomer, and the kings who were with him, the sovereign of Sodom came out to meet him at the valley of Shawai. That is the sovereign's valley. So, the sovereigns, the kings that fled, Sodom's king that fled, like seeing that Abraham was able to knock off the kings that they fled from. Like Sodom noticed, like Abraham was able to take down these kings that that had them running, and so he coming out to see who this man is. Like verse 18, and Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was the priest of the Most High El. So Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalem, most people believe that this was Mashiach. I'm gonna just read it in, the text that is in. It says, and Melchizedek, king, he was a king of Shalem. And not only was he a king of Shalem, he was the priest of the Most High El, the Most High God. So he's a priest of the Most High. And he brought out bread and wine. So this is who Melchizedek was. I can't say that he was, the Mashiach. He was the Messiah. He was Yahushua. Can't say that because the text doesn't say that. Verse 19, and he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram of the Most High El. That's the Most High God, possessor of the heavens and earth. So Melchizedek blessed Abram. Verse 20, and blessed be the Most High El, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tenth of all. So this is what Abram gave to, Melchizedek. A tenth of all that was gathered in. And I don't see it says anything about he tithed them. I don't see that. You have people who add on. Let me keep reading. Maybe it'll say it, but I don't see that it says that. Verse 21. And the sovereign of Sodom said to Abraham, give me the people and take the goods for yourself. Verse 22. But Abram said to the sovereign of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to Yahuwah, the Most High El, the possessor of the heavens and the earth. Verse 23, not to take a thread or a sandal strap or whatever is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. So this is Abraham like, yo, I don't want nothing. I don't want none of this. I don't want none of this. You know, I don't want you to tell someone, you know, that you made me rich when it was the Most High who got me lit, who got me rich, who got me all that I have. So he didn't want the glory to be to this man, or this man's to brag and say like, yeah, I looked out for Abram. He wanted all the glory and the credit to be to the Most High Yah. So he didn't accept what, you know, the king was offering. Like he brought back, although he took down the kings that took this, you know, these belongings and these people from this king of Sodom. He didn't want nothing for that. He just really came for his nephew. He didn't come for, you know, he didn't come to collect. He didn't come to, you know, get parts of, you know, what, you know, the belongings and the possessions and the people. He didn't come for that. He just wanted his nephew. That's the only reason he got involved. Verse 24, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me. You know, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. So this is consistent with that. This is consistent how we're going to see, but like I've said this, I broke this down, how the tithe is always linked to food. It's always food. In all, most true believers, most true people who walk with the Most High in Scripture, they rarely ever did they look to accept any money. It was always food. It was always food, you know what I mean, and shelter. Some form of shelter. Somewhere to stay and food. They didn't even like accepting clothes. They didn't accept clothes. And Messiah said that. Don't later, this is consistent from here in Genesis all the way to where you read in Matthew, where the Messiah say, you know, don't accept, you know, silver, gold, or clothes from anybody. You know, just accept food. And this is consistent. This is always been this way. That was chapter 14. So now we're in chapter 15. Verse 1. After these events, the word of Yahuwah came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great. This is what came to him in a vision. Again, we got to keep in mind and keep it real. We can have visions within ourselves. Like within our heads, we can have these visions. It's almost like daydreaming or just envisioning something. It don't have to be something, you know, that you have to see with your own eyes outside of your head. This could be a vision within yourself, within his head. So these visions could be very well that. Verse 2, and Abram said, Master Yahuwah, what would you give me, seeing I go childless? And the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Verse 3, and Abram said, see, you have given me no seed, and see, one born in my house is my heir. Verse 4, and see, the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, so this is the word of Yahuwah that came to him, saying, this one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir. Verse 5, and he brought him outside and said, look now toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. Verse 6, and he believed in Yahuwah, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. So being as though Abram believed what the Most High was saying to him, the Most High credited to him for righteousness, for his belief. Now, when you truly believe, the Most High can sense who truly believes. We're the only people that cannot sense who only the, all right, so we can, this is how, like, flesh and blood people, the only way we can know for sure that someone believes and they're just not saying lip service and they're just not talking, we know we know a person believes through their actions. The Most High doesn't have to, the Most High can see that as well, but he needs to see your actions as well. But he can tell by, he can see see what's in a person's heart. If what they, if you know, if they believe, or if they just saying they believe and they don't believe. With us, we gotta see it. We gotta see it to believe. With each other, we have to see it to believe. We have to see actions. We have to see actual change. We have to see actual improvement. We have to see actual works, putting work in. You can say this and you can say that. You can say you're going to do this and you say you're going to do that. You can say you believe, but the only way to truly show and prove that you believe is through your actions. What you doing. You know, what you doing. But with the Most High, he loved to see your, you know, actual obedience and actions, but he can tell when you believe without you, you know, doing anything. And this is how he credited Abraham for his belief. Like it says, and he believed in Yah, he believed in Yahuwah, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. Verse 7. So that was, you know, verse 7. That was verse 6. That was chapter 15, verse 6. We're in verse 7 now. And he said to him, I am Yahuwah, who brought you out of Kasdim, to give you this land to inherit it. Verse 8, and he said, Master, Yahuwah, whereby do I know that I possess it? Verse 9, and he said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So we had some pigeons back then. Some pigeons. Pigeons is ancient, man. They've been around. They've been all over. Verse 10. And he took all these to him and cut them in the middle, and placed each half opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds. So this is a request by the Most High. The Most High requested these 3-year-old animals to be brought to him. And, you know, this was, you know, the decision of the Most High for this, that, you know, these slaughterings to happen with these offerings. Verse 11, and the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. So the birds was like dropping down. These scavenger birds was pretty much, you know, scavengers then as well, like they are today, dropping down, trying to get, you know, trying to get a taste. Verse 12, and it came to be when the sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell upon Abram, that sea, a frightening great darkness fell upon him. Man, I don't know if y'all ever experienced a frightening great darkness, but I truly have. And it's not good, especially in the middle of the night, in the middle of sleep. A frightening great darkness fell upon him. Verse 13, and he said to Abram, Know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners meaning, strangers, in a land that is not theirs, travelers, you know, in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So this is what he's showing Abraham, like his people is going to be, you know, strangers, sojourners, travelers, from in a land that's not theirs, and should be serving, serving and being and getting afflicted for 400 years. Verse 14, but the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. So yeah, they may be speaking of times of Moses. Verse 14, now as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. So this is what he's telling them, like, yo, you would go to your fathers in peace. This is where the Most High clearly, assures Abraham that he would sleep with his fathers, like is when it was his time to depart from this flesh. And we have to keep this in mind as well. If you walk with the Most High, then you will rest as a spirit with your relatives who are also in spirit with, within the Most High, most likely within the Most High, the Supreme Spirit, returning to the Supreme Spirit we came from. And this is what he said to him, like, you will rest with your fathers. Now, as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Verse 16, then in the fourth generation, they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. Verse 17, and it came to be when the sun went down and it was dark that, and it came to be when the sun went down and it was dark, let's see, a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. Verse 18, on the same day, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abraham, saying, I have given this land to your seed from the river of Mizraim to the great river, the river Euphrates. Verse 19, with the Kenites and the Quinizzites and the Quadamites. Verse 20, and Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaim. Verse 21, and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Girgashite and the Jebusite. So that completes the chapter 15, but it got interesting because it was started to talk about how the sun going down. And I thought that he was like in a deep sleep already. So was he in a deep sleep before the sun went down? Because it says, and it came to be when the sun was going down. So this was when the sun was going down. This was like in the evening. This was like nearing the sun. This was like nearing the sundown when the sun was going down. And a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. So the sun didn't go down completely. This was when it was started going down. Like, this is when it started going down, like the twilight. And a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. That sea, a frightening great darkness fell upon him. So this is when he was already asleep. And he said to Abraham, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nations whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace, and you are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. And it came to be when the sun went down. So this was all in this all took place. This sleep took place between the, the hours of the sun going down and the sun fully going down. And it was dark. It says, and it came to be when the sun went down and it was dark, that see a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. So smoking a smoking oven and a burning torch came passing through that food. Like I mean that them and that like that like the offering. So like this smoking object and this torch, this burning torch, this smoking oven and this burning torch was just, just smoked up those animals that he split down the middle for the Most High. So that's what happened during all that, yo. That was a wild night. So chapter 16. That was the end of chapter 15. Now we're in chapter 16, verse 1. And Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no child, and she had a Mizraim female servant, whose name was Hagar. So this is Sarah's female servant that she likely picked up from Pharaoh in Egypt. But this servant was, a Mizraim, which meaning an Egyptian female. And her name was Hagar. Verse 2. And Sarah said to Abram, see, Yahuwah has kept me from bearing children. Please go into my female servant. It might be that I am built up by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. Verse 3. And Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mizraim, meaning the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. After Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So she gave Hagar to Abram to be a wife of his, so they can lay down together, so he can lay with her and have Sarah some children. Verse 4, and he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So Sarah wasn't feeling that. Even though it was her idea, she was despised. She was women, man. Hey, this is how they were wired then. This is how they're wired now. Verse 5. It was her idea, by the way. Verse 5. And Sarah said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. I gave my female servant into your bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahuwah judge between you and me. Oh, so it was Hagar despising Sarah, like, yeah, I bore him a child. And so she was basically trying to flex on Sarah how, yeah, I bore him a child. So, like, she was basically throwing it in Sarah's face and trying to flex on Sarah. Typical women, one up each other. Verse 6. And Abram said to Sarah, see, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what it is good in your eyes. And Sarah treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. So Abraham, like, man, this is your servant. She your girl. She your servant. Like, do to her as you want. Like, you taking it out on me. Do what you want to do. And Sarah chose to treat her harshly. That's, you know, it was her decision. This is the decision of most women. Verse 7, and the messenger of Yahuwah found her. So Hagar fled, like from Sarah treating her harshly. She just like, left the presence. And a messenger, an angel came about. So it's verse 7, and the messenger of Yahuwah, the angel of Yahuwah, found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. Verse 8, and he said, Hagar, Sarai's female servant, where have you come from, and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of Sarai, my mistress. Verse 9, and the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, return to your mistress, and humble yourself under her hand. Verse 10, and the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, I am going to increase your seed greatly, too numerous to be counted. So this is what he's telling. This is what the messenger, the angel of the Most High, is telling Hagar. Like, I'm going to increase your seed greatly, too much to be counted. Like, go back to Sarah, like, and humble yourself until then. Verse 11, and the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, see, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Yishmael, because Yahuwah has heard your affliction. So this is the Most High, the angel of the Most High, naming Hagar's child Yishmael. So this was a name given to Hagar to give to her son. So Yishmael came from Yishmael. The name Yishmael, was a direct name given by the messenger of the Most High, and likely the Most High himself. And it says, because Yahuwah has heard your affliction. So after you see in scripture, after you see a name, there's always a meaning to the name. And that's important when you read the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 21, where it explains the name that was given by the angel to Joseph to give to Yahushua, which is Yahushua, and what the name meant, meaning he shall deliver his people, So that's what that name should mean. So you have to, it's consistent. The scripture is always consistent. Whenever someone was given a name, like whenever it was emphasis put on a name given, the meaning of the name came shortly after the name was said. And this is a perfect example of it. We're going to see more examples of it. But this is where it says, see, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Yishmael. Because, this is the meaning of the name, because Yahuwah has heard your affliction. So this is what Yishmael likely means. Yahuwah has heard your affliction. Verse 12, and he is to be a wild man. He is to be a wild man. His hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and dwell over against all his brothers. So this is what the Most High named he named him Yishmael, and he knew that this son will be against others and others against him, and dwell over against all his brothers. He knew that he would be against all his brothers. He would be against, everyone, and everyone against him. And he named them this. He knew he knew the destiny of this child before he was born. And he explained it to his mother. And it's known that, like, popular belief is that this was like the father of the Arabs. This is the father of the Arabs. Yishmael is known as the father of the Arabs. Like, it's by popular belief, you know. And this is why the Arabs are against everybody, everybody against them, and they are against each other. This is by popular belief. I believe I'm using that terminology correct. And she called the name of Yahuwah. Wait. And she called the name of Yahuwah, who spoke to her. You are the El who sees. For she said, even her have I seen after him who sees me. So she acknowledged the Most High as being Yahuwah, knew his name and called him by his name, you know. Spoke to him through the angel. You are the El who sees. For she said, even here have I seen after him who sees me. So this is she acknowledging that she's seen who has seen her. Like, she was thankful that, you know, the Most High, you know, acknowledged her. So she was acknowledging him back as Yahuwah. Like, she called the name of Yahuwah. You are the El. You are the God who sees. Verse 14. That is why the well was called Be'er Lahai Roi. See, it is between Kadesh and Bered. Verse 15. And Hagar bore Abram a son. And Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Yishmael. So she followed through with the instructions of the messenger. And she obviously explained this to Abram because Abram was on board and calling and naming the child Yishmael. Verse 16, and Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Yishmael to Abram. 86 years old. 86 was different then. You know, not that different, because we're going to see, you know, we're going to see in the next chapter how, you know, it was just wild to think of bearing children or, you know, making children, you know, pretty much at that age. But that completes the chapter 16 in the book of Genesis. We're going to pick back up next week, but I'm going to pick this back up into the book of Isaiah. But I'm going to close this live out, and I'm going to come back and start the book of Isaiah. Yeah. But this completes the reading of Genesis. We read from chapter 13 to chapter 16, and we're going to pick back up in chapter 17 next week. But that completes this Genesis for this week. Stay tuned. Bear with me. I'll be back. Y'all, excuse me. Within, you know, a few minutes, I'm going to log back in. I'm gonna log back in. I'm gonna get back on live, but we're gonna pick it up in Isaiah. We're gonna be reading from the book of Isaiah when I get back on. But until then, peace, love, Shabbat shalom, peace and love.